seated. All right, we have our next witness who is appearing via Zoom. Is there any objection to her appearance and testimony via Zoom?
There is none for the pension.
Ma'am, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Ma'am, please give me your full name and spell both for the purposes of the record.
My name is Michelle Lampier, M-I-C-H-E-L-L-E. Lampier, L-A-M-P-H-E-R-E.
You may question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Lampier. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. You know John Skelton?
I do know John Skelton.
How do you know John Skelton?
We were married for a period of time.
When were you married?
We were married from April of 1992 until, I think, September of 2001.
And prior to the
I think
marriage,
September. Sure.
prior to the marriage, how long had you known him for?
We had known each other for 4 months.
When you first married him, where were you living at?
We were living in Washington, D.C.
And what were you doing there?
I was in the Air Force. John was in the Army.
How long did you live in Washington, D.C. for?
We lived in Washington, D.C. I lived in Washington, D.C. for a total of 3 years.
And how about John Skelton?
John had moved to Hawaii, I think about 6 months before I moved from the States.
And the two of you have a daughter, is that correct? Or you had a daughter?
We do.
And when was she born?
She was born August of 1993.
And what is her first name?
Her first name at birth was Catherine. Her legal name change is Kate.
So when did you move, you said, to what location at what time?
I moved to California, Vacaville area in 1995.
And when did you and Mr. Skelton get back in the same household together on a regular basis?
It would have probably been, I'm really not entirely sure. I think probably the end of 1995 or kind of early in 1996
And where would that have been at?
in Vacaville, California.
At this time, what is your employment?
I was still in the Air Force.
And how about Mr. Skelton?
When I first moved to California, he was still in the Army, and then he got out of the Army and moved to California.
To be with you and Katie?
Yeah.
All right. And how long were you at that location for?
We were there for almost 2 years, from 95 to 97.
Where did you go next?
Then we moved to Alaska.
And why did you go there?
Opportunity. So I had the opportunity to get out of the Air Force, and then I had the opportunity, or we had the opportunity to move to Alaska for a job. So we thought it was kind of one of those once in a lifetime things. So that's what we decided to do.
And how long were you in Alaska for?
We were in Alaska from 1997 to 2000.
And during that period of time, all three of you were in the same household?
Yes, until the very end of it, but yes.
And at that point in time, in 2000, beginning of 2001, something along those lines, did you and he separate?
Yeah, we did.
And walk us through what happens next in your travels and his travels.
So what happened when we separated, I was moving to Boston, and I was moving there without really having known anybody. I was moving to a person that I had met online and didn't really know him or his family, and so I had decided to let Katie go to Michigan with John because he was going to his family there in Michigan, and then his family knew Katie also, and she knew them, and so I felt much safer and more comfortable with her going to Michigan with family than going to Boston with strangers.
And Katie was about 7 now?
She would have been about 7, yes. Probably right at that point of 6 to 7.
So as you're setting up your new residence in Boston, you said Massachusetts?
Yes,
Mr. Skelton comes from Alaska and resettles in the Morenci, Michigan area, is that accurate?
yes.
Okay. Do you know where he's living at this point in time?
When he first moved there, I believe he stayed with, like when he first moved there, if I recall correctly, and it's been a long time, but I believe he stayed with his family. I would guess his Uncle Richard and Aunt Charlie. And then after that, he did, I'm not sure if he met Tanya first and then moved out into his own place, or if he moved into his own place and then met Tanya, but he didn't stay too long with his family before he got his own place and started getting settled.
Now, during the course of the marriage at the various locations, did you and John get along okay?
Yes, for the most part.
What, if any, problems were there?
The only problems really mainly were drinking, and the problems that stem from drinking.
By John, you're talking about?
Yes.
Are you able to provide any examples of what you're talking about?
You mean like the extent of drinking, or what do you mean by examples? What exactly are you wanting?
Problems that arose due to his drinking.
Well, before we got married, my mother actually met him while he was in the psych ward at Walter Reed Army Medical Center because he had overdosed on alcohol during his bachelor party and had to be admitted to the hospital via ambulance. And then he spent a week as an inpatient.
At that time?
I'm sorry, you cut out.
At that time, a week?
Yes.
Okay. And how long?
So,
Go ahead, finish up.
I was just going to say, and so then he was, I think from that, the Army had put him on kind of a rehab program.
What was the next
So-
incident after that that you're remembering about his alcohol issues?
There was another incident where he'd been extremely intoxicated playing racquetball at an apartment complex that we lived in, and he ended up having to go to the emergency room after getting hit by one of the balls in the eye, and his eye got extremely swollen, so that he was extremely drunk at that point. And before we took him, he would get sometimes kind of angry or upset when he was highly intoxicated. So he had kicked out the trellis of the balcony of the apartment on that occasion before we took him to the ER because of the racquetball.
Roughly how long after the week or so he spent in rehab did that occur?
That would have been several months after that, because that was in our first apartment that we lived in.
Okay, was there another incident that occurred subsequent to that?
There was an incident, probably the biggest incident was when we were living still at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, and that was where he had been extremely intoxicated at a party, and that ended up with his arrest because he had brought out a loaded shotgun, and the partygoers or the people at the party, I had felt extremely threatened. He came and got it. Well, I had already left the party when he came and got it and took the gun back to the party, and cops were called for that, and he was arrested for that and then permanently banned from Andrews Air Force Base.
How did he get a hold of this shotgun?
It was his. It belonged to him.
Where was it at?
It was in our closet.
Like in a bedroom?
In our bedroom closet, the master bedroom closet.
And did you see this happen?
I didn't. So I was in bed asleep, and John had the people who were hosting the party a couple doors down from us had brought him home because he was, had drank and was kind of belligerent. So they brought him home. And he came up, they put him on the couch, which was downstairs, the living room couch, which was downstairs. And then they brought him, and then he came upstairs and just kind of leaned in the bed and said something to me, and then I could feel him push himself back off the bed, and I don't know what instinct it was, but I instantly got up out of the bed and flipped on the light, and I saw him reaching into the closet. And so I knew exactly what was in the closet. So I flipped the light back off, ran down the hall and grabbed Katie out of her crib, and then ran back to the neighbors, kind of yelling for them to call the police. So I didn't actually see him physically grab the gun. I saw him physically grabbing into the closet, and the result was he came out with a gun.
And that was a situation where he was subsequently arrested?
Yes.
Okay. What happens next in this type of intoxication-related incidents? Was there another one?
That was probably the biggest one. There were several, when we lived in Alaska, I know we had gone to the neighbors, and they had asked me not to bring him to other parties again because of his drinking. I know he would drink and drive occasionally, or sometimes drink and drive, and he had knocked out like the neighbors' mailboxes while driving intoxicated one time. One time he was driving back from Walter Reed to Andrews Air Force Base, and he told me, and I did not witness this, but he had told me he was pretending to be a cop and pulling people over. like by flashing his lights on the highway.
Did a situation occur at one point in time that involved some sort of a pipe wrench or a wrench of some nature?
Oh, that was so I guess let me back up. The incident with the truck was actually our second apartment. Our very first apartment, yes, that was shortly after we got married. He had found a very large pipe wrench when he was walking home from work or from the club at work. And that particular instant, he would get kind of belligerent when he drinks. He gets kind of angry or upset. And so this particular incident with this pipe wrench, and I mean, it was one of those very big pipe wrenches. And I don't know if he was threatening me or he was just behaving threatening, but he put a hole in the wall next to my head with the pipe wrench and then sat there for the next hour and a half telling me about this pipe wrench. And I just had to sit there and listen because there was already a hole in the wall next to my head and I was afraid to move.
How big a pipe wrench are we talking about? Can you describe the length or size?
It was probably, I mean, it was one of the big pipe wrenches. It was probably at least a good 2 feet.
2 feet long?
Mm-hmm.
I know you're on Zoom, but you're trying to show something about 2 feet.
Oh, sorry. Yes, probably about 2 feet long. And I would say the wrench part of it was probably at least, I mean, I was 19 years old. I didn't know what measurements were, but probably a good 6 inches or so.
And at some
So
point,
there were just numerous incidents like that. Those were just kind of some of the examples. And John did not drink all the time. He was not a daily drinker, but when he did drink, he didn't stop drinking.
until what?
Until he passed out.
Was there some incident involving a dog as well?
Yes. So this was on Katie's birthday. She'd had a couple friends stay overnight, and we had a big black lab rescue dog, and he was a puppy, but he was a big puppy. He was probably stood waist high. And so the day after Katie's little birthday party, John was going to take her friends home. And when we had opened the door, the dog and I went out onto the porch. This was when we lived in Alaska. The porch, I was standing on the porch and the dog ran out the door and kind of knocked me off the porch, and I sprained my ankle. And so, and the dog kind of ran off. And so I really didn't think much of it. My ankle was sprained, so I went back into the house. John carried on and took the kids home. There were 2 girls, and Katie went with them. And so a little bit later, I called the mother of one of the girls, and I was just like, oh, I'm sitting here laid up because Alex, that was the name of the dog, knocked me off the porch. And so I've got to go find him because he ran off. And Bobby, that was my friend's name, said, Michelle, John was here. He dropped Katie and Brittany off, and he had the dog in the car and the gun. And so, so basically John had found the dog, taken the dog, and took him out to the woods and shot him.
Did he tell you that?
Afterwards, well, when I confronted him about it, and so
Did he say
he didn't tell me about it ahead of time. No, I didn't know until Bobby told me that he had the dog and the gun, and then when he came back home and he only had Katie and the gun and not the dog, I knew it happened and confronted him about it, and his excuse was that the dog had hurt me, and so therefore had to die.
How old was that dog?
He was probably 8 months old, 9 months old. He was a puppy.
So you're in Massachusetts, he's in Morenci. We're talking 2000, year 2000 now?
Yes,
And at some point in time, a divorce is filed in Lenawee County by John Skelton, is that correct?
yes,
And then there's also some hearings involving custody of Katie, is that also correct?
yes.
So tell us how,
The hearings, I don't know if they were hearings. We had friend of the court visits. We went through the friend of the court for the custody evaluation.
at some point, did someone contact you and make you aware that they were concerned about Katie?
Yes.
Tell us about that, please.
Well, John's family would kind of keep tabs on Katie, and they had called me to let me know that he was out, he would have her out with him while he was drinking or going to parties and that kind of thing, that he would have her out walking in the fields at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning when they would be leaving these parties, and he would be extremely intoxicated. They told me about times where his babysitter, and I think his babysitter lived down the road from where Uncle Richard and Aunt Charlie and Lisa and Tim lived. I think the babysitter lived down the road from there, but there were times where the babysitter hadn't let John pick Katie up because he would show up at her door. I guess one time he showed up so drunk he had urinated on himself, and so the babysitter wouldn't release Katie to him.
So with all this information supplied to you, what did you do? What decision did you make at that point in time?
So at that point in time, I decided that I already had a lawyer for the divorce, and so he had advised me that since we didn't have a custody agreement, that I should go and get Katie, because then if I brought her back to Boston, we could immediately file for custody there, and that meant that everything would have to take place there in Boston as far as custody went, and he couldn't, if we immediately filed the moment I crossed back into the state line, then he couldn't just come and take her. I could come to Michigan and take her because we had no custody agreement in place.
That was your lawyer?
So,
That was your lawyer?
yeah,
in
that was my
Massachusetts?
lawyer in Boston.
Okay.
In Boston.
What happens next?
So I drove to Michigan, and I had tried to take her out of school. And of course, the school did the right thing and called John. And so John came up there, and then that was when he immediately filed the custody for custody. And so then we had to go basically that route through the state of Michigan, or through Morenci.
And so what happens next?
So then we start going through the friend of the court, and we get, evaluated. Katie gets evaluated. Tanya, John and Tanya were definitely very well established as a couple by then, and so Tanya was part of those evaluations also.
So did you hire an attorney in Michigan?
I do not recall. I believe I only had the attorney in Massachusetts who was representing.
Well, let me refresh
I
your
do
memory
not
if I
recall.
can, just a bit.
Okay.
Your court pleadings in your name and John's name, in which Michael McFarland was your attorney. Does that sound accurate?
Yes,
You remember
Yes.
that now?
I do remember his name, yes.
Okay. As these hearings go forward with the front of the court, or meetings, I guess, what word do you want to use, is tell us what develops and what happens with the custody situation.
So we did our evaluations. At one point, John and I had conversations specifically regarding Tanya, because Tanya had had her own history. And so, John wanted me to assure me that Tanya was not a threat to Katie. He didn't want that playing a part in my comfort with Katie being there, and it really didn't play a part in my discomfort. I've never really held anything against Tanya. So I'm not sure how their evaluations went. I know how my own evaluations went, and at one point, my lawyer called me and had said, it does not matter to me how you get here, whether you walk, crawl, get on a plane, get on a bus, whatever, but you need to get here immediately and pick up your daughter. And so I guess I don't know what the friend of the court evaluations were. I do know that after that, initially John was given, I believe, supervised visits with Katie. So he had to have his Aunt Lisa present when he was visiting with Katie. Eventually everything got worked out through the courts, and it was unsupervised visits, just regular custody visits. But that was the initial evaluation from the friend of the court.
So when you were going through this process, as it was developing with the custody discussions, meetings at the front of the court's office, what was John saying about Tanya?
I mean, he supported her, and he was saying, that it was just a mistake that she had made. She had been going through her own very rough time, emotionally rough time, and she made just a genuine error in judgment. He had sent me her evaluation that was done. I guess, I don't know if it was by her own therapist or the court-appointed therapist. I'm not really sure, but he had sent me that so that I could look over that to see the professional's opinion about Tanya and how they didn't feel like she was a threat. And so I want to say Tanya was actually pregnant at the time that all of this was going on, like very early in her first pregnancy with John.
Okay, so you were kind enough to provide us with a document that John gave to you from the Samaritan Counseling Center regarding Tanya, then Tanya Derby, is that correct?
Yes. So that would be what I'm talking about, is that evaluation
And that was given to you by who?
By John.
And the point of him giving that to you, he indicated, was to what?
In support of Tanya, to just prove or show that she was not a threat to kids, that she wasn't an actual child predator or child molester. She had made a mistake and moved on.
Okay, hold on just a minute, Ms. Linfier. Your Honor, Exhibit 57, which has already been admitted into evidence by stipulation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna approach the court, if it's okay, and get this to you so you can review this while this is going on. So after the time that you had obtained custody, eventually there was a divorce that was finalized, correct?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you and Mr. Skelton were no longer married, and you had physical custody of Katie.
Correct.
And she would have been either 7 or 8 years old by now, right?
Yes.
The divorce judgment would have allowed Mr. Skelton parenting time,
Yes.
and by this point in time, you were back living in Massachusetts with Katie, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How did the visitation or parenting time go with Mr. Skelton and Katie?
She did go out to go visit him occasionally. There probably was not a ton of parenting time. It was difficult for Katie to get to him. He had his new family started, and so I know that there were some financial issues going on at the time. Both of us had ended up filing for bankruptcy due to our marital debt, and so but she did go visit him, and she did through the course of the years, she did, meet her brothers, and she did go visit him. There wasn't a whole lot of act as time went on. I mean, John was pretty upset for losing custody, and,
Did he ever make any statements to you about his position as being potentially a part-time father?
yes, John was not at all, that he had said numerous times that he would never be a part-time father.
And as time went on with Katie, did his activity, his participation in her life gradually, slowly get less and less?
Yes.
And did he blame someone for that?
John had a very, maybe volatile relationship with his father. His father was in the Navy and was gone for a huge portion of John's life. And then when his father was there, he was not overly affectionate. And so that really had an impact on John's view of being a father. And that's where he didn't want his kids to have that same kind of relationship with him that he had had with his father. That's why he had said he would never be a part-time father, because his was, and it wasn't a good relationship.
This is all information that John said to you?
Yes.
So as he became more and more of a part-time father with Katie, what did John say anything at all to you about that?
We had had a discussion about it one time, and his response was that, Katie could, it didn't have to be him making all the effort. Katie could certainly pick up a phone and make the effort herself. She was a kid. She was, 7, 8, 9 years old, and I wasn't, because I wasn't exactly enamored with John and his parenting. I didn't push Katie to continuously pursue a relationship. I felt like that was something that should be more of John's responsibility. I didn't discourage her. I never told her not to call her dad or whatever, but I didn't make a huge effort to make sure that she did either. And John, that was his thing. Well, Katie could certainly pick up the phone and call me. It doesn't have to be me.
Did John call very often?
No.
How often did he call, if you recall?
I don't really recall, but I would say, probably once every few months.
Was there a child support order he was required to pay to you?
There was, yep.
Do you recall whether it was very much?
I want to say it was around, I think it was $73 a week, I think.
Did he pay that regularly to you?
He did for a bit, and then something happened with his employment. I think he lost employment. He had an incident when he was a truck driver. He had an incident, and I'm not sure if it was a drinking and driving incident, but he had lost his employment, and I didn't get child support then. When he did have local employment, his family would let me know where he was working, and so I could contact the employers and they could garnish his paychecks. I did, for one period of time, forgive the child support debt, and so then I still didn't get it, on any sort of regular basis, and they asked me again if I would forgive it, and at that point I was like, well, no, you do have a child, whether or not you want to acknowledge you have a child, you can still pay for the child you have.
So someone reached out to you to see if you would forgive child support that John owed to you for Katie's support?
Yes.
Do you know who reached out to you?
Well, it would have been John.
Would Tanya have ever reached out and had a discussion with you about that?
Potentially, but I don't recall that she did. Tanya and I didn't really have a lot of conversations.
So when custody was awarded to you following those front of the court meetings, do you know whether or not at that time if Tanya was pregnant with Andrew?
I believe she was. I'm pretty sure that one of the first times I met Tanya was there going to those, either when I came and tried to take Katie or when we went to the front of the court. And yes, she was already pregnant.
What, if anything, do you think that played in these child support, parenting time, lessening over the years with John?
I think that Katie was out of sight and out of mind, and he had other children that he needed to concentrate on.
That he didn't have to be a part-time father with?
Right, to be a full-time father.
As time wore on, did you become aware that there was some marital difficulties with John and Tanya?
Not really. I didn't have a very close relationship with them at this point. I'm not sure. I do not recall if his sister, Lucinda, had mentioned anything to me or not, because I have kept relationships with his sister and his mother. But it wasn't really anything that I considered part of my business, and so it's not something I asked about or questioned.
So did, you said you kept a relationship alive with Lucinda and John's sister and Roxanne, his mother?
Yes.
Did Katie?
Yes.
Tell us about that. How was that arranged and how did you facilitate that?
Katie has always tried to stay close to, especially her grandfather and her Aunt Lou. She would go down there and visit them, spend time down there with them over some of her school breaks and that kind of thing, and they would talk periodically on the phone. And so, and I just maintained a relationship with them because of Katie, and so they didn't really view that, that whatever happened between John and I was our business, and it didn't really have an impact on them. I mean, it didn't need to impact my relationship with them just because John and I didn't have a relationship. You know, we still mutually had Katie. And so we tried to, I guess, for lack of a better word, co-family together.
Okay, Ms. Lanfear, I'm going to stop questioning at this point in time. Now, Mr. Amadeo may have some questions for you next, okay?
Okay.
Counsel?
Thank you. Hey, Ms. Lanfair, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How are you?
Good. How long were you and John married?
We were married in April of 1992.
And you were married about 9 years?
About 9 years, correct.
And did you say you only knew each other 4 months before getting married?
Yes.
Is it like a whirlwind romance?
Well, we were both I was in school actually on his Army base, and so we knew there was a high likelihood that I would be going elsewhere unless we got married. And so, yep, so it was very much a whirlwind romance, and we did it so we could not be separated, so.
Now, when you guys broke up, got divorced and such, was John upset about being a part-time father, as Mr. Hartong mentioned?
Yes.
And do you know why he was upset about being a part-time father?
Yep, as I have mentioned before, I mean, he was very upset about losing custody. And he just, being a part-time father was something that had a kind of negative connotation for him because of his relationship with his dad, and his dad having been gone so much of his life through his Navy career. And so John took that very negatively, and they didn't have us, his father was not overly emotional type of person. He didn't, tell John all the time how much he loved him or anything like that. Never told him he loved him when he was there. And so John just was determined that he was not going to have that sort of relationship with his own kid.
Did John ever try to keep Katie from you?
There was one time where we were moving from one apartment to another. Katie was 4 months old, and John we were moving, and so John's mother came up to take Katie down to Florida for the week. And I did not know, but he had been having conversations with his mother that she was just going to keep Katie and not bring her back because John was actually going to divorce me because I no longer liked to party and drink like he did. I had settled down too much after having Katie, and so he didn't think it was a very viable relationship for us anymore, and he was going to file for divorce and take custody of Katie.
Now, you mentioned you had a relationship with Roxanne, his mother, correct?
Yes.
And Lucinda, his sister?
Yes.
How would you describe the relationship? Were you guys friends? Were you like family members? How was it during the marriage? And more importantly, how was it after the marriage?
So Roxanne and I started out kind of rocky, and then we became family. And John's sister Lucinda, I mean, we've always been friends or family. We got along. Anytime we saw them, we hung out together or whatever. We could have a good time. Roxanne and I were the ones that we started out a little difficult, and we had to work out on that relationship, and we did, and we became close, especially after Katie was born, because that was her grandchild, and she very much loved her grandchildren.
And would you still consider them friends today?
I do. I mean, it's a little more strained now because of this entire situation, but I do still have contact with them. I do still talk to them. When John's father passed away, I took Katie down there so that she could be with him, and I stayed with Lucinda and certainly visited with Roxanne.
When John took Katie to Florida, was Katie harmed in any way?
No.
Did you ever fear John was going to harm Katie?
Did I ever fear that John was going to harm Katie?
Yes.
No. I feared it only after she was in Michigan with him alone, and I knew about the drinking and him not taking care of her so well when he was drinking, and that's because I know how drunk he gets.
You mentioned...
So I have those concerns.
You mentioned this racquetball incident. Can you elaborate on that, what actually happened?
So I don't recall if he was playing with somebody. It was very, very late at night. I don't recall if he was playing with somebody or if he was down at the racquetball court of the apartment complex that we lived in Silver Springs. I don't recall if he was by himself or if he was playing with somebody. But the ball, and racquetballs are hit at a very high rate of speed, and they have a high impact, and this one hit him in the eye. And so he had been very inebriated that night and had gone down there because he was agitated about something, and that was why he had kicked out the trellis of the balcony. And then he went down to the racquetball courts, I guess, to like blow off steam or whatever. But so when he came back, his eye looked like the racquetball had stayed under his eyelids. I mean, it was so swollen, it was just huge. So we took him to the emergency room there at Walter Reed.
And you also mentioned a psych ward doing him being intoxicated. Can you elaborate on that?
Yep. So when he had his bachelor party it was the weekend before we were getting married, and he had been drinking. It was his bachelor party, and he had gotten extremely intoxicated to the point where when they picked him up in the ambulance, and we're talking like we were in the dorm rooms at Walter Reed. We were in the dorm rooms on the base, and they had to get an ambulance to come and pick him up in the dorm room and take him right there to the hospital. And he died 3 times in the ambulance on the way to the hospital from his inebriation. And so they put him. He spent a few days in recovery, but they put him in there basically for the alcohol poisoning observation. And he was there for a week. He was there until the day before our wedding.
And you mentioned the child support hearing. Do you remember who your jurors was, who the judge was during the child support case?
I do not.
If I told you Margaret Nelly, would that name sound familiar at all?
Well, I can tell you,
And that
Counselor, I
does
can
not.
tell you from this document, it would have been Harvey Caselta.
That name sounds familiar.
Harvey Caselka was his lawyer during the divorce, so I'm just,
That's right.
yeah.
That's all correct.
So,
And we would stipulate to that.
okay.
Well, the stipulation for temporary custody is signed by Harvey A. Caselka
And we would
as the
stipulate,
judge.
and we would also stipulate to the fact that Harvey was his lawyer initially in the divorce, correct?
And the divorce with Tandy.
Tank.
With Tanya, but in this matter, John R. Skelton versus Michelle Skelton, Harvey was the
Jurors.
jurist.
You mentioned a once-in-a-lifetime job in Alaska. What was the once-in-a-lifetime job?
It is, I'm a histopathology technician, and there happens to have been an opening at the Federal Indian Health Services Hospital there. And so I applied, and they actually interviewed me and offered me a job. And so it was kind of like, wow, I have the opportunity, or we have the opportunity to go to Alaska. And
Was John happy about that?
yes, we both were.
And did you go to Alaska?
Yes,
How long did you guys stay in Alaska?
we were there for about 3 years, from 97 to 2000.
How was it in Alaska? Was everything you hoped for?
It was everything we'd hoped for and more. The most gorgeous place on earth.
As for the current situation in this case, do you have any first-hand knowledge of anything?
I do not.
Have the
Not firsthand knowledge. I have the knowledge that, that I've been told.
And who told you?
The internet told me, the reporters told me, the podcasters told me, the families have told me.
What have the families told you, and what family are you speaking of specifically?
I speak of John's family.
What did John's family tell you?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I'm not, this is hearsay at this point.
It's kind of hearsay upon hearsay. Counsel?
I'll move on. So just to be clear, have the police talked to you about this case?
Yes.
How many times have
The
you been?
FBI has talked to me about this case. The police have talked to me about this case.
How many times do you think you've been interviewed by law enforcement, if you know?
I think 4 times. It's either 3 times or 4 times. I know the FBI interviewed me more than once in the beginning. And then I have been interviewed by a detective more recently,
How recently?
within the last few months.
Who was the detective that interviewed you in the last couple months?
Can I look at my phone? I can probably tell you his name. I don't remember it offhand.
I know Rich. Okay. Would it be Mike Peterson?
That sounds right.
And what was the conversation, without getting into specifics, what was the topic of the conversation? He asked you if you had the information?
Just history, the same kinds of things that you guys are asking me here. And yes, he asked if I had any knowledge of what could have happened, that kind of thing.
What did you
So
share?
that answer, probably, no, I don't.
Did he tell you his theory on the case, or did he simply ask you what your thoughts
No.
are?
He simply asked me my thoughts.
Nothing further, thank you.
He wouldn't actually talk about his side at all, so.
Thank you.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you mentioned a situation about 4 months after you were married, or maybe 4 months after Katie was born, that John was going to divorce you because you stopped partying with him?
Yep, Katie was 4 months old. So it was 4 months after Katie was born.
He was arranging to have his mother to take Katie to Florida and stay with his mother?
Yes.
How did you find this out?
He told me after Katie had already gone to Florida, because we were moving our apartments, and so we had decided together that his mother would come and take Katie down to Florida with her for a week while we were moving, since we would be so busy packing and getting our furniture moved and all of that kind of stuff. And so while we were in the middle of moving, he said, oh, by the way, I'm filing for divorce and I'm gonna take custody and Katie is gonna stay with my mother.
And what did you
Until
say?
this, I said, well, please don't, and I begged not to get divorced. I was, young and didn't know any better. I just thought that could happen. I didn't know at that time that there was a such thing as custody fights. I just thought, oh no, I'm not gonna lose my daughter, so I'll stay married because I'm not gonna lose my daughter.
And when the divorce was filed in Michigan years later, John was the plaintiff in that case and you were the defendant, is that correct?
Yes. If that's what it says on those papers that the judge has, that's what it is.
Did
I'm not sure.
Mr.
I
Amadeo?
mean, he filed and I didn't.
Yes.
Okay, then yes.
Did Mr. Amadeo ask you a question along the lines whether or not you had any concern about harm to Katie by John? You recall that question?
Yes.
Didn't something happen in a bedroom once?
There was a comment made by Katie when she was very young, and I had discussed that comment with the friend of the court. I brought that comment up to the friend of the court, but after Katie had made that comment, and it was a sexual comment, it was sexual in nature, she was very young, I had to kind of evaluate that situation to decide whether or not I thought something was going on, whether or not I thought he was doing something. And Katie was not distressed. Katie was not, demeanor had not changed, her things like that had not changed, and so I didn't take it to authorities. I did let the friend of the court know that that was a comment that had been made, and so I feel certain that the friend of the court probably talked to her about it when she was being evaluated by them, but I was not privy to that conversation.
Does Katie have a relationship with her father at this stage of life?
No.
Is John still her legal father?
No.
Can you explain that?
So once Katie got older and became an adult, she asked my husband if he would legally adopt her, and so he did. Because she didn't at that point have, and had not had, a relationship with John for a very long time, and so.
And if you know, what was John's reaction to that?
I was told that he was very angry and very hurt and very upset. And so.
Who told you that?
It was probably Lucinda. It might have been his mom. I don't know if she told Katie, and then Katie told me. That's probably the most logical thing, is that his mother was extremely upset about it too. And so I think that it was probably his mother that told Katie, and then Katie told me.
Did you yourself have any discussion with either Roxanne, Skelton, or Lucinda about this issue?
No, and I don't recall that I did. I know we had to send a notification to John, like a legal notification to John. But I think Katie probably bore the brunt of the conversations with Lucinda and Roxanne, and I don't think Roxanne talked to her for a very long time after that. She was very upset.
You told Mr. Amadeo that you weren't afraid that John would harm Katie. Do you still feel that way now?
I prefer not to answer that.
I have no further questions, Ryan. Thank you.
So when John lost parental rights to Katie, do you understand why he was hurt?
Of course.
Do you think anybody would have been hurt in that situation?
I think that anybody could have been hurt, but I think that also have to take a look at the reason why, and do some self-reflection, and not blame the other person for your own shortcomings.
And to your knowledge, even upon being hurt and learning about this, did he ever try to do anything harmful to Katie after that?
No, because he was in jail. So he hasn't, to my knowledge, I think when he first went to jail, he wrote Katie a couple of times. And then to my knowledge, I don't think he's had contact with her afterwards. He's had some conversations with her when she's been down in Florida visiting her grandparents, but other than that, I don't think that there is much contact at all. And had not been even prior to the adoption.
Any additional cross?
No, not the first judge, thank you.
Any response?
No, we're all set. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your daughter's first name, is it Kathryn?
It would have been, her birth name was Cathryn. And her legal name now is Katie, Katie.
Thank you. Anything further? from
Nothing
this
else.
side?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Lanfear. We appreciate you zooming in today and offering your testimony.
Thank you.
Do we have any other witnesses ready to go.
Not today, Your Honor.
We will resume tomorrow morning at 10:30.
Judge, we're not tomorrow,
I
Humane Society,
think
right?
That's Friday. We will be back Monday at 10:30.
Wait, what, Monday morning,
Is that September
I'll go.
1st?
September 1st?
No,
At 10?
Monday.
Monday's the 31st.
Monday is the
Monday's
31st.
31st.
Got it. Okay, well then I'll see you Monday at 10:30.
That'll be good.
All right. I'm glad to see you soon.
Maybe you want us to take that as that?